Most don't remember what caused the Syria conflict to start. It started because of a 10-year drought.
Yes, water.
And folks having to move from their family farms into cities where they then were not getting any support, and therefore a civil war began. I think what Chairman Dunford was talking about is that we have to respond militarily very often to the effects globally of climate change.
Some say these problems are too big, that it's impossible for an individual or even a nation as great as ours to solve the problem of global warming, or the loss of forests, or the deterioration of our oceans. My response is simple. It can be done, and we must do it. This summer, we've seen a lot of talk about the greenhouse effect. As the nations of the world grow, they burn increasing amounts of fossil fuels, and that gives off carbon dioxide, which acts as a blanket, insulating the Earth, and thus could contribute, the theory goes, to an increase in temperatures in the atmosphere.
President Abraham Lincoln was also thinking of bold action 150 years ago when he said, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country." He was speaking before the U.S. Congress to confront the defining issue of his time, slavery. Everyone knew it had to end, but no one had the political will to stop it. Remarkably, his words ring as true today when applied to the defining crisis of our time, climate change.
Teddy Roosevelt was a great environmentalist. Ronald Reagan was an environmentalist. Somehow we have lost our way on the environment. I believe climate change is real. I think it's devastating. I think we have to act. And I agree with most experts that we may at some point reach a tipping point where we cannot save our climate. I don't think we're there yet. But the overwhelming evidence is that greenhouse gases are contributing to warming of our Earth. And we have an obligation to take action to fix it.
It seems clear to me also that climate change is a problem we can no longer be left to a future generation.
The world's governments alone cannot make progress. The kind of progress that is needed on global climate change, they alone cannot do it. They need everyone coming together, everyone working together. They need the cities, they need the states, they need the provinces and the regions. They need the corporations, the activists, the scientists, and the universities. They need the individuals whose vision and determination create movements. They need everybody out there. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us regain our momentum. Let us regain our purpose. Let us regain our hope by liberating the transformative power beneath the national level. That can be the great contribution of Copenhagen.
Flooding emergency along coastal cities today in South Florida as rising tides are leading to flooded streets.
Another night of tidal flooding on Miami.
Florida reportedly has the most number of big cities at risk from rising sea level.
Scientific models predict most of Miami Beach could be underwater by the end of the century.
I think that in every generation, there's going to be a big cause. There's going to be a challenge or a war. I think today we have sea level rise and climate change.
Our current plan is sort of how do we stay relatively dry for the next 30 to 50 years. The real long-term issue now is how do we create a sustainable community that includes our land use codes, our building codes and materials. Do we need to go to a landscaping plan that deals with more salt-tolerant species? How do we help individual property owners? How do they raise their houses, or what's the alternative there? Is an insurance company going to insure that home? Will rates go up? The early focus had been on the engineering solution. Now we got to figure out what's our strategy going forward.
I've come to Naval Station Norfolk, the largest naval base in the world. It launches some of the military's most important combat missions to places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria.
Governor, this is the second most vulnerable area next to New Orleans in terms of the sea level rise. Right now, our best estimate is approximately a 2-foot rise by the year 2050.
2 feet.
Exactly.
the major thoroughfare coming into the base, would be underwater anywhere from 2 to 3 hours every single day. That's on normal days. But the thing that really concerns us is the probability of storms. It can increase sea level rise by 4, 5, 6 or more feet.
We get a Category 1 storm here, we're already putting our piers underwater. So you get a Cat 2 storm, and half the base is now underwater.
At least 18 other major naval bases critical to our defense are at serious risk. Not 50 years from now, but today. And the only real solution to sea level rise is curbing fossil fuels.
I'm sure when you started, you never thought about that you got to deal one day with the challenge of global warming, sea levels rise, right?
Right.
The threat from nature.
Throughout my career, somebody that came up in, flying airplanes early on, it was probably something I didn't give a whole lot of thought to, but these days I give a lot of thought to it.
If we don't start now, in 20 years, we'll be looking back and we'll be saying, why didn't we? Why didn't we listen to the science and the engineers? Climate change is happening and we need to plan for it.
I mean, here is a vice admiral with 40 years in the Navy warning that we have got to act quickly. Our leaders are now warning that our oil addiction is gravely threatening our national security.